Hi, my name's Chris Bradshaw. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Azure Resource Locks in a festive manner. I'm going to start off asking what is an Azure Resource Lock. I'm going to explore why we use them. I'm going to demonstrate working with locks in the Azure portal and then wrap up by looking at how you can make sure your environment continues to be protected by them. Before I begin, it's worth mentioning that the Microsoft AZ900 and SC900 Fundamentals exams and the AZ104 Azure Administrator all cover resource locks in some form. So this is a useful but relatively straightforward topic to understand if you're following a certification path. So, an Azure Resource Lock is a feature applied to a subscription, a resource group, or even an individual resource, which can prevent resources from being modified or deleted. There's two types of lock, and their names are fairly self-explanatory: a read-only and do not delete. In read-only, you can't modify the settings of that resource. In do not delete, you can't delete the resource. Now, locks supplement role-based access control. They don't replace it, so they provide an extra step to prevent accidental damage by an authorized user. Today I'm going to focus on the do not delete lock as it's probably got more widespread use. Why should we use a lock? Here's an example. We have Santa's reindeer themed resource group. In it he's got 4 storage accounts: Cupid, Dancer, Prancer and Rudolph. So let's simplify that picture a bit into a normal Azure diagram we might be a bit more familiar with. If nothing else, animating the reindeer is a bit tricky. So we've got an Azure resource group containing 4 storage accounts that looks like this. Oh no, what's this? The Grinch bit has appeared. Now he's one of our elves, our admins, who's been assigned the contributor role on this resource group. Let's say he's helping feed the reindeer, but he's a bit clumsy today and comes in and removes one of our resources, when he shouldn't do. What do we do? Well, if Santa, as the owner of this resource group, had applied a do not delete lock, now the Grinch bit cannot remove those resources. He still has sufficient role-based access control permissions to do it, but Dancer is saved. So remember, we're still using role-based access control to protect resources against unauthorized access, but the lock helps us protect against accidental deletion. Perhaps someone was working with the wrong reindeer pen, or they were running a script against the wrong resource group. So now that we understand what a lock is, let's have a look at how we can work with them using the Azure portal. This is our resource group in the Azure portal, and we've got 4 storage accounts: Cupid, Dancer, Prancer and Rudolph. If we look at the locks, we can see there's currently no locks applied to that resource group. We can add a lock by clicking on add, entering the name for the lock. We might as well just put in do not delete here. We select the lock type. Now there's read only and delete, as I said, so we're choosing the delete lock, which is do not delete. And then we put some notes in so we know when we applied this lock, or how it was applied, or why it was applied. And we click OK. This happens very quickly. This isn't one of those things where it has to go off and deploy a lot, so that lock is now in place. So back on the resource group overview, we've still got our 4 resources. But now what happens if we try to delete the resource group? Of course, we have to copy and paste the resource group name in, as always. But when we hit delete, we get an error. The lock has stopped the resource group from being deleted. So whilst I've got role-based access control permissions that allows me to do this, the lock has prevented me from accidentally deleting that resource group. The same applies if I try to delete an individual resource, in this case the dancer storage account. Again, we get the pop-up and the resource can't be deleted. We can still create resources because this is just a do not delete. So if I create a new storage account, and I won't bore you with the whole process there. So we've got a new storage account, our Festive Tech Calendar 2021. So say we actually wanted to delete one of these storage accounts. Well, to do so, we go into the lock screen, we delete the lock. So you can't just disable the lock, you actually have to delete the lock. And once we've deleted the lock, we can then go back into our resource and we can delete it. We still get prompted to enter YES, yes. But because the lock isn't there, the resource is now deleted. But now we've finished that work, we should go back in and recreate the lock. Again, we put the same details in. So do not delete lock, and we click OK, and that lock is now back in place, and we're ready to go. So now we've looked at what locks are and why and how we can use them. Let's crack open some PowerShell and just see how we can check for locks, how we can look for lock removals, and how we can reapply missing locks. Right, let's imagine we've decided to apply a do not delete resource lock to our resource group. We want to schedule a weekly check to make sure that that lock is still present. So the first step is to check whether the resource group has a lock. So we'll get the resource group. Next, we can retrieve any attached locks. Okay. Now we have that lock variable, we can check that to see if a lock is missing using an if statement. In this case, there is no lock. So this is great, but before we just slap that lock back on, let's check if someone's recently removed the lock to do some work. We can do this by looking in the activity log for that resource group. So let's look for something in the last 3 days. We can collect all the log entries using the commandlet get activity log, and we're looking for an activity with the lock deletion in the message. So we've got get activity log. We're telling it we're looking in our resource group. We're looking up to 3 days ago, and we're looking for this message Microsoft authorization /locks/delete. We can again use an if statement to check whether a lock has been removed in the last 3 days, if there's any value in that log entry variable that we've just recovered. So if there's a value there, then a lock has been removed in the last 3 days. Otherwise, it hasn't been removed. And in this case, one has been removed in the last 3 days. Finally, we could bring that together. We could say if the resource group is unlocked and a lock has not been removed in the last 3 days, then let's apply a new do not delete lock. And we'll put a comment in there to say how that lock was created. And we can use this using the new Azure Resource Lock commandlet, which looks something like this. So we've given the lock a name, do not delete, just as we did through the portal. The lock level is cannot delete. Notice this is a different terminology when we're using PowerShell. We've put something in the notes there. This is automatically being applied to protect our reindeer. And we're telling it we're applying it to the resource group name, and false is there just so we don't have to confirm. Obviously, if we're running this in a scheduled script, we don't want it to be sitting there waiting for someone to press the Y key. There we go, that's gone away and created the new lock. Thank you for listening to my talk, and thank you to the Festive Tech Calendar team for putting on this event. There's a link here for some more resources, including a template to build out the examples I used today. Season's greetings to you all.